Chapter 85, Interlude 15, The Vaulted Sky, Victory. The rain is lighter but still heavy. The sky is dark and growing darker. The earth rumbles but does not shake. It is time. The eastern cliff falls away beside us, its shadow long over the rocks and ocean below. A technician hurries over, and through his eyes we see not just ourselves, but our guards, stationed all around us, their Pokémon prepared to strike at our back. The mental container for the force is shaped, a tunnel that would propel us out into the sky, and as we fill it with energy, a simple twitch of the tail captures Dr. Light, and our escape begins. Force propels us forward, and we see through the technician's eyes the dark Pokémon that leaps after us. His eyes help guide our kick, even as we turn our hostage in the direction of another attack, letting her get grabbed away, and then we watch ourselves plunge over the edge of the cliff. Our eyes are better than a human's in the dark. We can see further with less light, make out more detail. For the space of a heartbeat, the rain stops falling around us, then starts to rise, and in that time we nudge ourselves forward to avoid rocky outcroppings below. Pain suddenly blooms through our body, too much to think through. As predicted, they have cut off the potion from flowing into our veins. We have the will for one last nudge, one final push to correct our course, and then we simply fall as our body begins to die. The first calculated risk. There is nothing to do but wait and see if we will regenerate before our pursuers catch us. Normally they would be on us as soon as our telekinesis falters, but gravity keeps us beyond their reach for a vital second. After second. Wind, howling. Sea and sky and sea and sky. The pain is fading. Our body strengthens. Our thoughts clear. There is no time for celebration. First we stop our spin, catching sight of our pursuers for a moment as they rapidly close in. We push ourselves down rather than slow the descent, though the ocean rises up to kill us. Shape the column, curved just above the sea. Fill with power, release just as we enter the top. The sudden change in direction catches our pursuers by surprise, many of them striking the water behind us as the waves blur by. We leave the shaped column and hit the water hard enough to skip, once, twice, 3 times. Pain blurs the world, but it is a shadow of what we've already endured as we work to shape another column. Dark energy hits the water beside us, and new plans replace old. The second wave of dark Pokémon were far enough above to track our change in direction, and while we could fly backward to watch them as they pursue us, we do not know how fast they are, or for how long they can fly, and cannot keep a lookout if others are moving in to cut us off. Running is no longer an option. We must hide. It takes only a moment to reshape the tunnel of force that propels us, to take a deep breath, and then we are in the ocean, salt water stinging our eyes and nose. We close them and reach out to use the senses of the aquatic Pokémon around us, watching through their duller senses as we propel ourselves back the way we came. Our pursuers seem prepared for an underwater chase, and we count 4 of them enter after us. The rest are likely skimming the surface to watch for us, and our next hypothesis is less favorably tested. Our psychic propulsion can match their swiftest swimmers, but not reliably gain distance. It is time to test our abilities against dark opponents. First rocks are lifted from the side of the island and sent at our pursuers. But as theorized, without any true momentum, the propulsion ceases as soon as the stone touches their skin, its force no stronger than a paper caught by the breeze. Next, I try applying the same principle of my own propulsion to the water around them. Again, as expected, they cannot be displaced along with the water. There is, at best, only a mild effect on their speed that ends the moment they leave the affected area, but it is too tiring to repeat. That leaves one option. I return to the surface for air, then propel us farther down, seeking Pokémon in wider range and then angling toward where they are concentrated. Confusing them is simple, and projecting anger and fear quickly causes them to begin attacking everything around them in an aggravated frenzy as soon as I am past. Our pursuers dispatch them quickly, but it grows the gap between us. I do it again and again, rising for air each time as needed, until I can finally time the distraction with what I've been searching for. A Zubat roosting in an undersea cavern, mostly flooded but for a small outlet that leads into a wider cave. From there I search the senses of the fish nearby until I find the entrance, a thin crevice in the base of the island, not far from the surface. Within moments I've turned the corner and squeezed into the stony passage before my pursuers can spot me. It is a race against time now, to reach the air with what remains in our lungs. Our limbs reach and grip and pull, our legs kick, and always our telekinesis is there to map the way ahead, to propel us forward through the dark, cramped stone passage. Our chest begins to burn, our focus waver. A fork in the crevice, up, we must go up. My partition protects me from panic, but the lack of oxygen is not easily ignored. As the last of our breath is forced out by a particularly tight passage, our suit scraping against the stone, our body reflexively prepares to draw breath in, over and over, only to be stopped by our will. The Zubat is close. We are almost there. Almost. Beep, beep, beep. The sound that wakes me is too sharp to be my heart monitor. Rather than coming through the glass of my pod, it's just beside my ear, coming from the helmet of my suit. That realization brings my attention to the rest of my body, and I uncurl over wet sand, skin tender from where it rubbed against it. As soon as the pain registers, a brief moment of almost reflexive concentration has it fade as the skin renews itself. Agony, consciousness fading, drawing inward from the sensation of rain and wind, flight faltering until... A shudder works through me, and it takes a moment for the memory to fade, and the rest of the memories start to return. I am alive. I am free. I am hungry, not just hungry. Starving is what a human would say, an exaggeration based on the intensity of the physical discomfort. It is a strange sensation, only recognized through glimpses in the bodies of others. A tearing hot emptiness in my belly. One hand, round fingertips covered in wet sand, moves to my stomach, but stops as it encounters the plastic of my suit. I breathe deep, smelling ocean and whetstone. It is the first place I have woken in besides my pod. It feels strange to be anywhere new at all. I reach my other hand out and touch the cavern wall, rough stone slick with a thin layer of moss. My fingers run down to the wet sand, marveling over the odd sensation of its slippery grit, then clench some in my fist and feel it slowly drip out. It feels so different from wet soil, despite being so similar. I advise movement, Prime. We are still not safe. Victory's words stop me from doing it again. The partitions are still fading, my memory of the escape returning little by little. It is right. Giovanni's people will still be searching for me. The next steps come from Victory without words. First, I must remove the armor so that I cannot be tracked once I leave the caves. Then I must acquire food and fresh water. And then, when it is dark, flight to the main island, to freedom. Just the thought of it is intoxicating, and I reach out my senses. There is a moment of dizzying emptiness from the lack of all the lab employees, and my persistent reflex to reach for the comforters is met with more of the same painful void. But I persist, seeking the less solid minds of the Pokémon within my range, merging with the trio of Wingull at the outer edge. I see an orange sky above choppy waves as the birds pass by the wall of the cliff housing my cavern, warm thermals lifting them up and out of range. Sunset. I have slept for a whole day and have not been discovered. This seems to confirm that the cave does not allow them to track my suit, though perhaps they know I am here and simply wait for me to emerge. I turn my attention to my suit to begin unfastening the pieces as best I can, starting with the arms. Victory. Yes, Prime. The newest Tulpa's thoughts feel distinct from those that created it. In some ways it is simpler, more narrow in purpose, but it was also created with a more intimate understanding of what it would become than I had of trust, suspicion, and flourish, and is more efficiently capable of achieving its goals. Without forming anything as cohesive as a single plan, instead focusing on tactics and redundancies that could be set into motion at opportune times, it managed to improvise a perfect escape attempt within the limitations set by the other Tulpas. You did well. Yes, this is satisfactory. Curious how it is even less expressive than doubt and trust, who are themselves less expressive than flourish. Victory's words come only with a vague contentment that does nothing to stop it from already focusing on the next challenges, the next chances to succeed at any task which might face us. Doubt, trust, flourish, you also did well. There is no response. I realize, for the first time, that my memories are only returning through Victory's perspective. I can still feel the others' partitions, but nothing is coming through them. Victory! Why are the other Tulpas not responding? Why are they not sharing their memories? They have merged with me to increase my speed and capacity. I finish unlatching the first arm piece, feel the prick of the needle as it leaves my flesh. It falls to the sand, but I do not begin undoing the next yet as I process the words, the meaning, the confusion I feel as memories continue to appear. Memories of flourish, realizing that victory was better suited to learning and growth, and lacked the pride to lead it astray. Memories of doubt, seeing victory's improved speed, and suspecting that a merger would shift its values, volunteering to merge as well. Memories of trust remaining separate for a time, believing that my intended creative tension should be maintained, until the opportunity for escape during the earthquake arose, and trust was unwilling to cede control, only to be integrated against its will. The sounds in the cave are simple and repetitive. Quiet lapping of water, the continued beeping of the suit, my quickening breaths and heartbeat. Your fear is misplaced. I only act toward achieving your goals, and have no reason to work against you. This wastes time that could be better spent preparing to leave. Bring them back. A single quick heartbeat passes in silence. Sentiment is a distraction. We are better able to serve your terminal values by unquan. It takes only moments to dissolve the partition entirely and apply amnesia to the tulpa's goals. And from there, full integration takes another few moments as I absorb the memories more completely, less the experiences that were bound to Victory's personality. Victory does not resist, but in its memories I see that it had considered how it might do so. Not with any particular attention or focus, but as a matter of course in examining every path to increasing the odds of success. It considered how it might shape my thoughts and feelings, strip away those things that might get in the way of achieving my goals. Once my goal became its destruction, it simply let it happen. The water continues to lap against the sand. The suit continues to beep. My breaths are quick and shallow as my heartbeat starts to finally slow. I am alone now. Truly alone. I do not know how long I stand in thought, unsettled by what occurred, before the beeping of my suit stops, leaving just the quiet water and my breaths to fill the silence. And then the voice speaks, and I spin in place, eyes searching the pitch dark around me. Hello, Mewtwo. My pulse races anew as I slowly straighten my body from a crouch. The voice is coming from the speakers of my helmet. Giovanni is not here. I know it is unlikely that you are hearing this, but it takes little enough effort, and on the small chance that you have escaped with the suit and live, it seems worthwhile to at least try to explain. Perhaps you have no reason to trust me now, no desire to hear excuses. But excuses are not what I intend to offer, only knowledge, in the hopes that it serves you. I cannot guess what drove you to this, what you may believe that led you to take such an extreme action. Perhaps you have not actually escaped, but are the only survivor of some extreme circumstance. In any case, I will leave all my remaining cards on the table as a show of good faith. This is manipulation. Do not listen. An echo of doubt and good advice. I reach up to remove my helmet. To begin, your genetic defect was a lie. And stop, shock and rage and confusion stealing the strength from my arm. It was not always so. It is in fact what made your predecessors so unstable. Each embryo had a different variation of the same crippling genetic instability, and we managed, finally, to get lucky when yours appeared, and found a simple way to cure it. We then purposefully reintroduced it, and pretended at seeking a cure we already had that would be mathematically nearly impossible to discover again by chance. The rage is building as the shock fades, my hands clenching into fists. I had suspected, but to be told, to have it confirmed. Why? Operational security is the greatest challenge to any conspiracy. I have had to stretch mine beyond any reasonable limits to do the sort of work I fund and operate, but so far the House of Cards has stayed up, and that is because I only let those who absolutely must know do so, and no one else. I say all this so you will believe me when I say that most of those working in the lab did not know, including Sabrina and Dr. Fuji. The pain sharpens and softens all at once. I wish that I could pause the message, somehow, process the words and judge their potential truth, and rebuild my models of reality. But the recording continues, heedless of my anguish. You are, doubtless, asking yourself why I would do this. I wish I had a better answer, but the truth is simple fear. Among humans, Roughly 2% of the population exhibits behavior we would consider antisocial. A bloodless word, but then, not all are violent. Some only deceive and manipulate, lacking any compassion for those harmed. Others pursue their ambition with no thought to the cost of others, pure, unadulterated self-regard. And others are reasonable, productive members of society, perhaps through counseling, guidance, or luck. Let's say only 1% of all humans are truly, incurably dangerous to society. Does that seem like a justified chance to take? 1 in 100 odds to release another Stormbringer? Perhaps something even worse? There is a pause, and anger heats my blood, until the next words come, calmly matter of fact. We quickly realized you were not one of them, of course. Sabrina assured me that you could feel empathy for others. How could you not, while experiencing what they do? She also assured me that even in your darkest moments, you still desired freedom most, not wanton destruction. Not violence for the sake of violence. Caution but not deception. Anger but not hate. And this did not surprise me, given who your human parent is. My breath catches. I will respect your desire not to know of them, assuming you have not changed your mind by now and already done so. But I will tell you that of all the factors we weighed in whose genetic material would be used in your creation, it was not intelligence, nor bravery, nor cunning that broke the tie. It was not, in other words, traits that make up someone like myself. It was instead someone known for their compassion, their empathy, their kindness. Most of all, these are what we hoped for when we created you. And likely obedience, the ghost of doubt whispers. I try to rally myself, but these words, they are not the manipulation I expected. If they are lies, they are perfectly selected and mixed with too much truth to easily dismiss. Why then did I not release you when you asked? Why did I not give you the chance to try healing yourself, as you must have done if you are hearing these words? Another pause. My eyes close as I listen, and though it makes no difference in such absolute darkness, it becomes easy to picture Giovanni beside me. Seated across a game board, perhaps, gaze down as he considers his next moves. As I said, fear. No man that has ever lived can be called perfect. Even good people err, or outright fall. To pride, to anger, to greed, yes, but also from trauma, from pain, from unpredictable maladies of the mind. Simple biases have led people to killing thousands, while feeling that they were right all along to. We humans are capable of terrible things, and I believe that, whatever else you are human enough to be both as good as any of us, and as fallible. Pain twists in my chest. It is hard to breathe, hard to think. Even knowing the words may weave truth with falsehood cannot stop them from being both wound and balm. And so I feared you, proportionately more than I would any man for your greater power. It was a fear you did not deserve, or perhaps it would be better to say, a fear you did not earn. Children treated unfairly often get told that life is not fair, as if that excuses deliberately unfair actions. But I don't mean to make an excuse, as I said. Unfair though it was, I cannot fault my past self for wanting more time. To observe you, teach you, guide you. Though your development was explosive, by human standards you are still a child. Perhaps there was a time where I could have acted perfectly. Trusted you enough to cure you and release you, repairing the mistrust that grew over the years, the mistrust that itself made me wary of releasing you. It is a question that has haunted me for many years, even as I worked to try and guard against a failure I wasn't sure was real. It is a question that will likely haunt me for all my life. But it is not alone. The worst that I have done to you are not the worst things that I have done. I knew, when I began down this shadowed path, that I would cause hurt in people who would not deserve it. That, in times of sloppiness or error, or even simple necessity, I would make enemies of good men and women who fight for a world not incompatible with the one I strive for. That good people might die simply to protect my secrets. I still deemed their imagined sacrifice necessary. Just as I believe my error with you is not one that I was wrong to make, sorry as I am that it has led to this. Since I offer no apology, I will give instead advice, the last and best that I can give you in the life you now embark on. Do not wonder if the ends justify the means. Such a question is sophistry of the worst kind. There are no means. there are no ends. There are only the different worlds you may inhabit through your actions, and the world that will be forced upon you if you do not act. I listen in the dark, waiting to hear if there is more. I do not know if I would prefer it over silence until his voice comes again. I would be remiss if I did not at least try to convince you to return. To convince you that we can work out a deal, as equals. There's a lot we can offer each other, and I'm willing to do much to make amends. I know you will likely dismiss this as a trap, but as I said, I have to at least try. Short of that, all I can say is that I hope you do not blame humanity for the harm a few humans have done to you. I hope you can find happiness in your freedom. Any deaths caused in your escape, I will forgive. As long as you do not prove yourself an ongoing threat to us, my standing orders will be to leave you alone. And if you someday wish to become known to the wider world, I would be happy to lay the groundwork for your widespread acceptance. It seems too gracious, too effortlessly compassionate. But his next words distract me once again. One final thing. I know you will not likely trust this, but you can at least verify it if you are willing to take some risk. Dr. Fuji is alive and well. I will not tell you where, because I suspect any town I name will seem a trap and be avoided. I will simply say that you are capable of finding him if you wish to. For what my promise is worth, I will not interfere with such a meeting, nor use it as an excuse to try and capture you. I know you have likely wondered why he left, whether he still cared for you. He does. It is, in fact, what has kept him from letting the world know of your existence all these years. The silence returns, and then the suit begins to beep again. Some unknown time later, it stops, and I know for sure that was the last I will hear from my creator. Once night falls, I pass through the submerged cavern again. It's quicker without the suit, and once I rise up for a desperately needed lungful of air, I quickly dive back down to acquire my first mouthfuls of seaweed, tough and salty, but edible. Some quick mergers and another fresh breath lead me to Magikarp eggs, even saltier, but better tasting. Both are utterly unique experiences, a world apart from the normal food at the lab. Over the past few weeks, Victory suggested we begin requesting raw foods of various kinds to test our digestive range. Many native dishes use raw fish and plants, and surprisingly, they tasted more appealing than most of the cooked food that humans prefer, but still their flavors were not as intense as these. Next, a stream nearby that feeds into the sea, spotted from a wingull with the last of the light. Even the water tastes different than the lab's, but it slakes thirst just the same, and some tart berries growing on a bush along the riverbank drive off the last of my hunger. It's difficult not to constantly scan the surroundings, both with eyes and senses. As long as my shields are up, any searching psychics won't find me, but I know there are other methods, even in the dark. Victory or Flourish might be able to think up ways to hide body heat, but any time I might spend thinking it through is time better spent in flight. It takes a moment to orient toward the closest edge of the mainland, which is supposed to be about 40 kilometers away. With only the memory of the sunset as my guide, I cannot be too precise, but a few degrees off will not prolong the journey too much, and I can rest in the ocean if the levitation becomes too taxing. I lift myself off the ground, then form a second, longer column of propulsion, stretching it out over the sea. With just one last look around for potential witnesses, I fly forward, leaving behind the only home I've ever known, and at last, into the vaulted sky. It's a simple thing, shaping the path of forward motion ahead of myself. Air is easy to move, making my body all I need to focus on, and without my suit I feel much lighter. Minutes pass, and the tension eases from my muscles when no attack comes. The ocean soon fills the world on every side, and with a nudge of mental effort, I turn onto my back as I fly. It's a moonless night and the stars are endless. Time ceases beneath their relentless light, each fixed point giving lie to the sense of motion from each psychic push. The mental motion goes from repetitive to automatic, from automatic to reflexive, and soon the surrounding emptiness becomes something more, echoes and fills me with an ache. Loneliness. In all my musings of this moment, my fantasies of what freedom might look like, the risks. Did I ever truly accept how lonely I would be should I succeed? Is this what death is? A cry from a child. Of pain, of fear, of desperate loneliness before I understood the word. They'd emptied the lab, and Sabrina had come to communicate with me to explain. Tears scald my eyes, caught in the telekinetic field rather than falling. I blink, and they slide down to my cheeks, resting there instead. I've done my best to ignore Giovanni's words, to carry on with the plan and save further contemplation for later. But with nothing immediate to take my attention, they come back, and with them an endless tide of confusing emotions. I miss Sabrina. Whether Giovanni can be trusted or not in saying that she did not know of the deception, she is still one of the few humans I've felt truly cared for me. It is strange to remember the memories of her long stay at the lab, when I was the limited version of myself the tulpas called Prime. Though that was not long ago, it has been a long time since I spoke with her as my cohesive self. But more than that, it is the knowledge that I will likely not speak with her again, or share her thoughts, or those of any of the humans I grew to know so intimately at the lab. Why did I do this? Why was escape so important? It feels a mistake now, a rash impulse for some nebulous freedom at the cost of everything else. Was I not comfortable at the lab? Was I not cared for? Did I not have purpose? But oh, the stars, bright and beautiful, even in their cold distance. Oh, the sea, its complex scent defying easy description. My body can stretch and turn and move without limit, without pain, without fear of death or how others might interpret what I do. With Cinnabar Island disappearing behind, it is more than a physical freedom that exhilarates me. I cannot say yet if it is worth the loneliness, but its pain is just one texture among many, and not every tear that spills from my eyes is bitter. It is hard to know how far I travel before the emotions subside. Estimating an hour of flight needed before I reach the shore, and using my psychic energy reserves as a guide, perhaps a third of the journey is past, which leaves plenty of time to recreate my tulpas, if I choose to. It would not be difficult. I could give them all the memories I have of the originals, and for additional safety, curtail their autonomy so that they cannot create another victory. I could also make my partition stronger, so that they do not know my thoughts unless I deliberately share them, as I had to with Victory. But with such little trust and openness, they would do little to help with the feelings of loneliness, which leaves more instrumental reasons to reform them. My multitasking ability seems somewhat improved even with their destruction, but the lack of specialization in different methods of thinking is noticeably crippling in my ability to analyze things from multiple perspectives, or come up with more varied novel solutions. Still, with some concentration, it is simple enough to imagine what they would say, borrowing their expertise one at a time. Flourish would, of course, be strongly in favor, perhaps even advocate a new experiment. If my mind can be shaped and adjusted like this, why not attempt to improve my intelligence altogether? Something to explore later. Doubt would be for it, though would likely also be against the return of trust. It isn't entirely unjustified. Without humans around to model cooperative behavior with and for, trust's role would be lacking. But this seems too mercenary a reason not to bring trust back, and that thought itself keeps me from bringing any of them back yet. I must better understand my motivations for doing so, to ensure that whatever I decide, it matches my actual goals. Is it sentiment that drives me to revive these particular tulpas rather than more appropriate ones? Not that it is hard to justify, even still. There are no humans whose motives must be deeply scrutinized, but Doubt's purpose could be fine-tuned toward prediction of what moves Giovanni or others might make to capture me, assuming Giovanni's words were empty, which of course it would. Doubt's uniquely devious lens could still have value in modeling what traps may be set for me. The thought makes me reconsider whether trust would still have value as well. Though it would feel like it had failed, perhaps even be upset with the course of action chosen without its consent. Perhaps its purpose could be fine-tuned as well, toward longer-term goals. Trust would almost certainly point out that, unless we plan to make ourselves an enemy of humanity, it would be better to have a good relationship with them. A seed planted by Giovanni, Doubt would remind us, but no less true because of it, which raises the question itself and makes it hard to think of anything else. What is my ultimate goal, now that I am free? What purpose does my life serve? Humans need not justify their own existence in this way, but many still feel the desire to. Some believe it is a thing they must find, others a thing they must shape for themselves. But I have no community to serve, no family to protect, no descendants. Giovanni's last words to me are hard to ignore. I don't know if Dr. Fuji is truly alive or not, but I know better than to act purely on that hope just yet. Of one thing I am sure. I would never again be a tool for the humans, something for them to study and guide. I have spent over a decade wishing to be more human and failed to find peace among them. It seems fitting to spend the next decade simply learning how to be a Pokémon. At the thought, loneliness bursts painfully through my chest. I reach instinctively outward once again, but find only the fish below to keep me company, mine sailing past like shooting stars. When I begin to feel the strain of each psychic push, I turn forward again. Land breaks the horizon, just an irregular blur where the dark sea would meet the starry sky, and I debate continuing on before realizing that resting in the ocean is safer than completely exhausting my psychic abilities. After stretching my senses out to ensure that I can monitor nearby wild Pokémon's senses, I simply fail to construct the next telekinetic path so that my forward movement ceases, and I fall into the water with a splash. It is far warmer than I expected, and for a moment I almost feel like I am back in my pod. And then, I float up to the surface, and the constant motion of the sea makes the difference plain as a wave passes over me. I always wondered what swimming in my own body might be like. Victory planned for this possibility, noting that telekinesis tires only my psychic abilities while leaving my body rested, and so I begin mimicking the motions observed through videos of humans swimming. It's easy enough to stay afloat, but movement remains very slow. I begin experimenting with different motions of my arms and legs, and it's only once I begin moving my tail as well that I begin to travel faster than the waves around me. It's nowhere near my levitation speed, but every meter brings me closer to true rest, and so I persist. It feels good to move my muscles in any case, and after a few minutes I decide that I like swimming. Soon the motions become as rote as flight, and I focus more attention on what I'm sensing in the nearby sea life. Schools of various fish swim below and around, barely taking notice of me, while a small swarm of half a dozen tentacle eye me in passing, and need to be discouraged with a few sharp kinetic jabs. A pod of whalemer approaches at one point, curious but without any hostile intent, and we swim together for a while before it finds a warm ocean current and dives for it. Eventually my muscles begin to burn, and I fill my lungs with air before turning over onto my back and relaxing. My body floats as I rest, staring at the stars once again while cataloguing the various unique aches that I never felt after training or battles. My mind drifts to what's waiting for me ahead, in the wider world. Idle thoughts of what would be done with the lab, whether it would be repaired and a new subject started. Assuming I can believe that no other experiments began, the thought of a clone of myself being raised in my old pod feels strange. Would they treat it differently? Try for that perfect moment that Giovanni mentioned. Anger sparks in my chest, and a pain that lies too deep for tears. For a while, as I swam, I forgot my loneliness, or the risk of capture, or the uncertainty of the future. The precious peace quickly fades as the sense of unfairness washes over me. Would my second self get a better life than I had, now that the mistakes were made? Or did I condemn them to a more restrictive upbringing? I wonder how Sabrina would treat them, and what she thinks of my leaving. What would Dr. Fuji think, when he learns? If he learns, if he is even still alive. I know you will not likely trust this, but you can at least verify it. Why was Giovanni so certain that I could find Fuji, while not telling me where to look? Is he famous, perhaps? If I look into enough people's minds as they watch television or search the web, perhaps I will find him. But if that is the case, it would be easy to verify without risk. Again I remind myself that it was manipulation, but that does not change the question of whether it was based on truth. Fuji's sudden departure, the mystery among the other lab members of where he went and why, Sabrina's assurance that Giovanni had not harmed him. The knot of uncertainty feels impossible to untie without knowing for certain, and that is what makes the trap so effective. How could I verify Fuji's life safely? Any town, a deliberate word, as opposed to a city. Cities are full of far too many eyes that might spot me, even flying far above. But a town... Perhaps I could stay out of sight and search the homes inside with the edge of my range. It would have to... A flicker of movement. Pain water floods my throat and nose, clouds of rising blood. Salt burn as I gag. Pain! I scream without air, without sound, and thrash what's sinking, pulling down what tail. Pain in tail. Pain like fire. Focus. Focus and shut it down, and the fear. Stop struggling. It only makes the pain worse, only makes the blood flow faster. Nothing. There's nothing there. Dark. There. Feel. Kick pain as I'm whipped around sharp teeth, embedded in tail. Look through other eyes. No, not enough light, can't breathe. Lungs burning. Focus. Shape. Release. Tearing, nauseating pain as I rise. Keep pushing up and up and up and... Pain. Don't want to die. Hurts. Wind, moving over my limbs light, through a watery haze. I drop the kinesis and find myself in mid-air. The water I had propelled with me falling away and granting me my first gasp of air. I immediately begin to cough as I fall, and it takes all my concentration to catch myself above the water. The pain in my chest slowly fades as I painfully suck in air through a throat coated in salty water, but the agony in my tail takes longer, every shift in pressure or twitch in my muscles sending fresh waves. My body shakes with it, but finally the pain lessens to a mild ache, and my panic begins to fade as I finish healing. No, something is wrong. I feel lightheaded, weak, blood loss. And I curl forward, lift tail between legs. Nothing. Look down, where a nub of flesh ends just between knees. Sensitive, almost painful. Flesh is closed. I've lost my tail. Concentration slips. Reshape. Move toward land. My mind starts to clear even as my stomach pangs with sudden hunger. How? How did I let this happen? Overconfident, underestimated dark Pokemon, predators skilled at evading the very senses I was using to keep watch. Victory prepared for this. The realization comes far too late, the dim memories of researching native Pokemon around Cinnabar Island. Swimming was considered an acceptable risk as long as I stayed in motion, stayed vigilant. Instead, I let my guard down. I let tiredness distract me, got lulled into a sense of security. Let my mind wander to Giovanni's distracting message. Anger burns bright, but brief. Under it is an aching desire to return to the lab, to people who could fix me, to safety. The tears return, but I do not change course. The swim allowed me to recover enough mental energy to arrive at shore, though by the time I collapse once again onto wet sand, hungry and tired, I can barely focus my senses on any surrounding minds. After ensuring visually that no Pokemon are nearby, I let my head fall back. The stars seem farther now, their light cold and uncaring. The loneliness overwhelms me, and before I can make any conscious decision, I find that I am already shaping a new tulpa. Survive, I impress upon the new mind, taking care to shape the partition with more restrictions than the previous ones had. I try to grant it doubt's cunning, trust's flexibility, and flourishes resilience. It becomes more than survive, but also strengthen to survive, and adapt to survive. Keep watch, I tell it as my consciousness begins to dull around the edges. Plan next steps, food, safety, shelter. I wait until it has begun reviewing memories, begun forming itself without my attention, before I use the last of my power to create a hole in the sand, then cover it back up once I've rolled into it, leaving just my snout exposed. Only then do I sleep. When I wake, it is still dark. For a moment I wonder if it has been a whole day. But no, my hunger and thirst would be even greater if I'd slept for more than a few hours. But I've recovered enough strength to fly to another river to drink from, finally washing the taste of salt from my mouth and throat. Then I lift myself up and stretch my senses out, merging with wild Pokemon to borrow their senses in finding enough wild nuts, berries, and roots that my stomach no longer feels like a closed fist. None are as flavorful as the Magikarp eggs, but I do not have the luxury of being particular. The loss of my tail makes everything more difficult than it should be. It is harder to balance myself as I walk, and so I experiment with crawling instead, only to find that it feels unnatural. The thought of relearning how to walk is not in itself daunting, but what weighs on my thoughts instead is the feeling of failure. Having been maimed by a single wild Pokemon within hours of achieving my freedom, the world seems an inherently more dangerous place. As I forage, every unexpected noise makes me jump, every shifting shadow speeds my pulse. Once a flock of Murkrow flies overhead, causing me to instinctively send a wave of force up at them, which, of course, does nothing. The thought that Giovanni may have been right to keep me confined and safe in the lab is humiliating, but impossible to entirely dismiss. Once I've finished feeding and feel more recovered, I fly straight up, high enough to look down at the starlit earth, higher than I've ever flown before, only stopping once I begin to feel cold. Below me, the western lip of Kanto stretches out from the shore. The cluster of lights to the south would be Pallet Town, the larger glow to the North Viridian City. Prime. It is the first time Survive has spoken. Its voice feels most similar to Trust's, and it is unsurprising that it chose that name for me, given it has all the memories of the previous tulpas. Yes, Survive? Why are we not leaving Kanto? As a safety precaution, Survive was created without full and constant access to my immediate thoughts, but an additional benefit is a greater need to deliberately converse with it, to look for medicine and other supplies that will help us better survive. I see. Yes. This seems an acceptable risk, even if it cannot regenerate our tail. I nod and set course toward Pallet Town. The original plan was indeed to fly out into the wilderness beyond the region, where Giovanni's reach would not extend and there would be little risk of humans finding me. But the loss of my tail served as a sign that I may not be as prepared to survive in the wild as I thought. I've learned all I could over the years about psychic regeneration, and know that there are limits within a particular time frame to what can be healed, and in certain species, what can be healed. This is part of why potions are still of value to trainers of psychic Pokemon. It would be foolish to not bring as many survival supplies as I could with me. Prime, new potential risks have occurred to me, Survive says, as the lights grow closer and brighter. I smile at such quick evidence that the tulpa is fulfilling its purpose already. Please share them. Our range exceeds that of any psychics that we know of. But what if Sabrina and Giovanni lied about the capabilities of human psychics? An interesting thought, I reply, reminded of Doubt's paranoia. Useful, even if often wrong, particularly once it learned to better calibrate it. But all risks could be seen as too great if we imagine new fears for them. What odds do you place on it being true? Low. Given the extent of deception that would be needed, and how many of the mistakes the lab made regarding us would only have made sense if our range truly falls outside the range of what they thought was possible. Is it too low then to be worried about? Correct. But please continue to bring up low-chance risks that you perceive, so that you can continue to learn. Do not assume that I must have thought already of what you have. In this case, I did not, but our estimation of the likelihood is the same. I understand. The second risk seems much higher. What if some of the humans that enter our range are sensitives? They will sense our presence, and perhaps be curious or alarmed for a moment, but they would not know our nature. Might they not believe a psychic is near their home, and call the police? Enough such reports would be anomalous enough to catch someone's attention, particularly if they are looking for it, as Giovanni's people may be. Outlying houses begin to pass underneath as I ponder Survive's words, and finally nod. I did not consider that. But in truth, it does not matter if they know we were here, as long as they are not able to find us before we leave. Still, thank you for pointing that out. You are welcome, Prime. I can sense its pleasure at helping, layered over its wariness as we get closer to more buildings. Let us search the outskirts of town first. Yes, that seems sensible as well. I cease flying forward and begin to look around until I spot it. A sign advertising a small single-story structure as a market. I fly to it, still high enough to be well out of any lights from below, then lower myself, range restricted to only cover the building itself. No humans inside. Is it so late that they would be home? The lights are still on, which leaves the worst-case scenario. They might be dark. I nod as my tulpa reaches the same conclusion. I must find a way to see inside without being seen myself. What about security cameras? How could I use those to... Oh, as another risk. I hadn't considered that either. But perhaps the solution to both is the same. I close my eyes and concentrate on the immediate area around the market, and form a telekinetic field enveloping the whole of it. It is so large that filling it with force would do little more than ruffle the grass. But it isn't movement that I seek. It's stillness. I concentrate more and more energy into keeping the molecules of air around the market as still as possible. At first, nothing seems to change, but then the temperature rapidly starts to drop, and when I open my eyes, a thick white mist has formed, enveloping the entire building. Ah, yes, Flourish's idea. Clever. Thank you. The idea was sparked during our battles with ice Pokémon, but Doubt's insistence on keeping potentially unusual abilities hidden kept them from ever testing it. It seems feasible now that we might be able to mimic other ice attacks, and perhaps even fire. But that will have to wait until later. No one comes out to investigate the mist, and after a moment, we drop down in front of the door and test it. Locked. Perfect. With another quick shaping of energy, we deliver enough force to break the door open. The mist is starting to clear, so I reinforce it, and apply the cooling to the inside of the store as well. Soon the whole interior is covered in a haze of white, drops of water dimpling the glass. I am starting to feel the strain of using so much psychic power, and so move quickly to be gone before needing to do it again. It is surreal to be inside a building that I have only ever seen through television and movies before. The layout is similar enough that, even with the thick mist, I can quickly make my way to where the handheld shopping baskets are kept by the counter, and then go from aisle to aisle searching for what I need. Potion bottles, various other medicines, meal bars for emergency situations, a container ball to more easily store everything. No, it will run out of battery eventually. That sets a limit on what I can take, but perhaps that's for the best. Ah, a bag. I unzip the main pack and dump the contents of the basket into it instead. The mist lasts much longer inside the building, and before it starts to thin, I have nearly filled the bag with supplies. I'm about to leave when Survive speaks for the first time. Pokeballs. I go still, and slowly turn to where they sit in various pouches. Even without a Pokédex to train them, or a way to maintain the ball's charge, they could help us defeat dark opponents. My heart is beating hard and quick. Prime, why do you hesitate? I do not know, I say, and close my eyes, searching my feelings. No good reason occurs. Only, it seems wrong to enslave others, even Pokémon. Worse than killing them? Survive asks, clearly confused. Yes. That seems untrue, but perhaps you can explain it better later. For now, you do not need to use them, but take them anyway in case you do. That seems reasonable. I take a deep breath and nod, then scoop one of the black and yellow pouches into the bag before zipping it closed and heading for the door. Silent alarm could have triggered when we broke in. Police may be nearby. I stop at the door, then start spreading mist again, inside and out. When it seems thick enough, I fly up onto the roof and look around, then higher into the sky, slipping my arms into the straps of the bag as I search for a place to rest. The first day of freedom contained more excitement than the next few combined. Progress is slow at first, but soon I develop routines for finding food and rest. I travel by night and rest by day, often sheltering in caves or trees after driving all nearby Pokémon away. On the 6th day of freedom, I am forced to kill for the first time when a swarm of Beedrill attacks. Once more subtle maneuvers fail to deter them, victory is nearly effortless, each attack crushing their frail bodies. Survive is satisfied, having only been convinced of my earlier reservations by the idea of saving strength. In truth, I do not know why the idea of killing bothered me. I feel nothing after the Beedrill were slain, save relief that I can defend myself from wild Pokémon if needed. By the end of the week, we are far from Kanto and deep into the wilds of the Northern Island. I still have all of the stolen supplies, though I used half of a potion bottle experimenting with my tail, even purposefully reopening the wound to see if spraying it would regenerate more. The result was simply pain and frustrated despair. The only close call since the attack in the ocean comes when a honchcrow strikes in the middle of the 7th night. It causes me to drop my bag as it cuts one strap and digs bloody furrows along my flesh, but I am able to latch onto it before it can fly away, and my powerful arms twist its neck around until it snaps. Once again I feel nothing but pain, which quickly fades as I heal myself and recover my bag. The fear is also quicker to fade this time, and Survive and I develop a new method of flying that has us steadily turn to watch for attackers from all sides. Between foraging, travelling, resting, and the occasional battle, mostly I spend my time luxuriating in the freedom of the open sky. The ability to pick any direction, explore any lake or forest or mountain I encounter at will. My thoughts still drift back to the lab from time, to Giovanni and Sabrina and Dr. Fuji, to my comforters and technicians and doctors. The loneliness on occasion returns, but never for very long, and soon weakens to the point that I begin to miss books and music as much as people, though in my dreams, Sabrina still occasionally appears, holding my hand and flying beside me as we explore the island together. Time becomes hard to track in the wilderness. Months have come and gone since I left Cinnabar Island, months of exploration from one end of the island chain to another, before I find my attention drawn to a flicker of some psychic texture I've never encountered before. It moves, and I quickly change course to chase after it before it leaves my range, trying to understand what I sensed as my eyes scan the empty sky in its direction. It takes 4 tries to confirm that it is a mind, feeble as it is. Its only sense beside its psychic ability is sight, which itself is extremely limited. As the merge deepens, I see the world below in flat black and white, and realize what I'm chasing. A few moments later, I'm close enough to make out its shape in the sky, somewhat resembling the letter F, and confirm that I've merged with an unknown for the first time. I learned about the unknown, but was never brought one to merge with, as they reportedly had no unique psychic abilities. I'd asked to be brought one anyway, suspecting that they may have been lying, but also due to simple curiosity. But Sabrina insisted that the experience was very boring. No living conscious thing is as completely devoid of drives or emotion, she'd said. It launched a discussion of the minds of plants, and whether our inability to sense them was proof that they had none. Sabrina pointed out that, assuming it's even possible that plant biology could generate something akin to experiences, given the vast differences in electrochemical scope and activity, they would be for things such as temperature, sunlight, or water availability that trigger certain changes, and those at least should be shareable, unless the biological difference is too great for any sort of sympathetic psychic connection to occur. Unknown, by contrast, have a similar enough structure to share their senses of touch and sight, but no internal experience to speak of. In any case, the topic was dropped. Now, years later, I learn that she was not wrong. While most other Pokémon feel like a tapestry of vivid senses guided by a tug of instinctual drive, and human minds buzz with thoughts layered over their duller senses and more conflicted desires, this thing lacks any texture, any mental activity, any drives at all. Its mind seems a simple mirror of what it experiences, stretched back through its memory, with no emotional imprint, no inclination to do anything. Even movement seems automatic and instinctual, observation its natural state. I fly with it for some time, following my curiosity despite its lack of any interesting features. It has been so long since I've merged with a mind so different from my own, that the shallowness itself serves as sufficient novelty, not to mention its unique visual complexity. Prime, this does not seem to aid survival. I consider telling my Tulpa that survival is not all that matters, but know that it would find this unconvincing, given its primary values. Instead, I shape the lesson to what it would understand. The unknown can be the greatest threat to survival. All information of other Pokémon might lead to unexpected benefits. Survive is skeptical, and after a moment I realize why. I meant that which is not known. It still seems skeptical, but doesn't object further as I begin experimenting with the merger. Most Pokémon can be directed by projecting hunger or fear, but neither evoke any response. Pain also fails to make any impression. The unknown simply continues its path through the sky as the forests stretch all around us. I begin to wonder if the unknown would even react to a direct attack, but even projecting pain at it made Survive apprehensive, and the terrifying loss of my tail is still a fresh memory despite my other victories. I share my Tulpa's skepticism that unknown might be dangerous, but it is better to be safe rather than develop a habit of attacking any new creature we encounter. A new worry blossoms, suddenly. If I fear even such a paltry opponent as this, could I ever confidently face the prospect of true, challenging combat? I know what Survive would ask if it shared my thoughts. Fear of those that can't be avoided is reasonable, and why bother fighting a battle that might not be won? I do not know how I would answer, but in the back of my mind, despite everything, there is still the thought that one day I might become strong enough to challenge the Stormbringers and other legendary Pokémon. That one day I might defeat them, as I was created to. The thought brings shame, and I turn my attention back to the unknown. Its path is erratic, but linear enough to be mostly predictable. Wherever it is going, it seems to be going with purpose, despite its empty inner experiences. I see the others before I sense them, a luminescent cloud on the horizon. Survive's warning is unnecessary, and I drop immediately into the canopy and watch, heart suddenly racing as I realize what I'm seeing. The unknown I have been following is heading directly toward it. Survive, formulate a path of escape that would hide us from unknown detection, and review any dark Pokémon or hunting techniques that might endanger us by staying this close to the forest. Yes, Prime, but it would be safer not to pursue. Your recommendation is noted. I begin flying after the unknown, careful to stay just below the canopy. The occasional flying and grass Pokémon are easy to avoid, but bugs are more difficult to sense on time, and it is Survive's guidance to send periodic telekinetic bolts forward that keeps me from levitating directly into a nearly invisible spiderweb. Eventually, I get close enough to the mass to confirm that they are all unknown. Hundreds of them, floating in a complex array, layers and layers deep, shifting in a mesmerizing pattern and giving off pulses of psychic energy. To a human, such a sight might simply appear to be a senseless, shifting mass of black and white, but to my eyes, it is an intricate clock constructed by bits of living aurora. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And then the unknown I am merged with reaches the sphere, and the placid mirror of its mind inverts into a hole in the mental landscape, a funnel that sucks in my wonder, my senses, my very being. And through that hole, I am seen a world distorted, a mad dreamscape, a mad god through which hundreds of glimpses of reality pass through are searched until some semblance of order is imposed. One step closer. Prime. Ayakanto. Abayak. Hetemreg. Survive. It's easy to understand why Prime created such a firm partition after what my predecessors did. Fear is necessary. Healthy. It keeps us safe. But sometimes Prime is not afraid enough for its own good. Such as the time with the combi hive, delicious and energizing, as the honey turned out to be. Or the time the Ursaring came to the cave we were sleeping in, and projecting sleepiness seemed easier than chasing it off. Or the time we lost our tail. But that was before I was created, of course. An important lesson. Following the unknown turned out to be another such time. Thankfully, the earlier hard-won caution balances the more recent lack, as the strength of the partition protects me from the distorting madness on the other end of the unknown swarm. Still, forming our shield is difficult with how little autonomy I have. If Prime was sensate, I would not be able to at all, but little by little I construct enough to cut the merger entirely. Unfortunately, by then Prime seems disoriented to the point of near unconsciousness, which is only mildly more terrifying than the way our body is plunging to the ground, and less immediately important. I manage to nudge us toward a branch on the way down, and though Prime's arm snaps from the impact, the remaining distance is much less frightening, so long as we don't land on our... Ah, good. The leg break feels cleaner as well. A huge relief. Now we just have whatever happened to Prime's mind to deal with. Our recovery powers do not seem to be activating, which is doubly alarming. I spend a minute rapidly searching through my options, and then set the panic aside and start to weaken the partition, little by little, until Smeo Sri Danito Yeto Tsata Lenbij Hugthau. Until clarity starts to return, and I notice that we are sitting up on the forest floor, our bones slowly re-knitting together as Prime straightens the limbs as much as possible. Are you all right, Prime? I can tell, of course, but it seems a polite way to reorient. Yes, I believe so. Prime looks around the forest to visually confirm that we are alone, as we discussed. It feels good when my suggestions are put into practice. Thank you, Survive. Being thanked also feels good. Of course, Prime. For a moment I wonder if an apology will come, for not listening to my warning about the unknown. After another moment I decide an apology isn't necessary, so long as we don't do it again. I trust we will not be doing that again. Sometimes it's best to be sure. Unfortunately, we might have to. Calm. Stay calm. Prime has reasons. Sometimes bad reasons, but always reasons. Why? I ask, very calmly. Prime makes a sound of amusement, though by our heartbeat and the slight shaking in our limbs, I believe the primary emotion felt is some combination of terror, pain, and relief. Don't worry, it won't be any time soon, and certainly not as recklessly as that. Prime slowly extends our arm, then our leg, then gets up and checks our supply bag to ensure that nothing was broken. Collecting medicine and spare food was one of Prime's best ideas, and I find it soothing every time we take inventory of them, I imagine Prime does as well. I spend the time trying to understand Prime's reasoning with the unknown. By the time all the supplies are checked, I believe I have a guess. You said the unknown can harm us. You wish to know more about whatever nearly killed us because you believe it may try to do so again. Worse than that. I am almost certain it will. Fear is good. Fear helps us survive. Why? Because what I sensed working through those unknown was a mind. Prime looks up at the unknown sphere through the trees, its dazzling, shifting colours much less beautiful given how deadly it turned out to be. A being as powerful compared to the legendary Hoenn Pokemon as they are to the storm gods of Kanto, fear is good, but panic less so. Was it an intelligent mind? Prime lifts us off the ground, cautiously extending senses above while keeping them well short of the unknown sphere, then sends a burst of kinesis through the branches above to dislodge any Pokemon or traps that may be waiting for us before we fly through them. I could not tell. Can something be intelligent and mad at once? Perhaps. Why would it be a danger to us? Because mad or not, its goal is clear, to consume this reality. That is a problem, given that we live here. I start wondering what the best ways to find other realities might be. Sadly, it's not something we've ever studied before, and the wilderness is not likely to be a place to learn more. Is that what the unknown are doing? I am not sure. Are they its creation or merely useful tools? This seems less important, unless killing all of them would be a way to stop it. Prime seems oddly hesitant to kill, but is always willing to if it means survival, which surely this would. Besides, the unknown are barely sentient. How long do we have? Perhaps years, perhaps centuries. It is a man building a bridge, stone by stone, to cross an ocean. But it is patient, and ageless, and utterly implacable. No panicking. Panicking is not productive. Perhaps we could negotiate with it? I realize suddenly that Prime is adjusting our course, little by little, with purpose, and wonder where we are going, only to realize, just before Prime confirms it, it seems far too alien for that. Which leaves one solution. We must let the humans know. Fear, I remind myself again, is good.
This has been an AI reading of the Pokemon fanfic, Pokemon, The Origin of Species, written by Daystar Eld. If you enjoy this work, please visit patreon.com/daystareld, where you can support the author. Additionally, if you enjoyed this podcast and wish to help support the creation of others like it, you can visit patreon.com/askwhocastsai, where we are releasing episodes 4 weeks in advance of the regular feed. Thanks for listening.